The story of the coastal temperate rainforest begins not with the trees themselves, but with the vast, moody expanse of the ocean. The Pacific Ocean, in particular, acts as a giant climate moderator, its massive body of water absorbing heat in the summer and gently releasing it in the winter, creating a remarkably stable, cool, and most importantly, wet environment for the adjacent land. This is the engine of the rainforest. Maritime air masses, heavy with moisture, scooped up from the ocean, travel east until they meet the first major topographic barrier, the coastal mountain ranges. Forced to rise, this moist air cools, condenses, and releases its burden as precipitation, not just as rain, but often as a persistent, life-giving mist or fog that can blanket the forest for days. We're talking about staggering amounts of water. Some areas receive over 200 inches of rainfall annually, a constant, gentle deluge that defines every aspect of life here. This hyper-maritime climate creates a very narrow band of conditions, a Goldilocks zone that is neither too hot nor too cold, but just right for a specific suite of organisms. It's this precise, ocean-driven recipe of cool temperatures and excessive moisture that sets the stage for one of the most productive terrestrial ecosystems on the planet. Now, step into this world. The first thing that strikes you is the sheer density of life, the overwhelming greenness of it all. Light filters down through a multi-layered canopy in soft, diffuse shafts, struggling to reach the forest floor. The air is cool, damp, and carries a complex scent, the sweet decay of centuries of plant matter, the sharp, clean smell of conifer resin, and the earthy perfume of wet soil and moss. Sound is muffled, absorbed by the spongy ground and dense vegetation, yet the forest is far from silent. There's the constant, gentle patter of water dripping from leaf to fern to moss, the distant rush of a snowmelt-fed stream, and the occasional call of a bird like the very thrush, its single, ringing note, sounding like a celestial flute. The architectural marvels here are the trees, and they are of a scale that inspires awe. The dominant species are conifers that have evolved to reach impossible heights in their quest for sunlight. The Sitka spruce, with its scaly, gray bark and sharp, stiff needles, is a true coastal specialist, often found closest to the shore, its salt spray tolerance allowing it to pioneer the very edge where forest meets beach. Inland, the western hemlock and the magnificent Douglas fir take over. A mature Douglas fir is a pillar of the forest, a trunk so massive and furrowed it looks like the skin of an ancient elephant, soaring upward for hundreds of feet before its crown becomes lost in the low clouds. These trees are not just individuals, they are ecosystems in their own right. Their bark provides a foothold for mosses and lichens. Their branches host entire gardens of epiphytic plants like ferns and even other trees that start their life far from the soil, and their hollows provide critical shelter for birds, mammals, and insects. But the real magic, the hidden network that sustains this entire lush world, lies beneath your feet. The forest floor is a soft, springy mattress of decaying wooden needles, sometimes several feet deep. This is the nutrient bank. In most tropical rainforests, nutrients are quickly recycled in the topsoil, but here, the cool, acidic conditions slow decomposition dramatically. Fallen trees termed nurse logs become the cradle for new life. A single, massive cedar log lying on the forest floor can persist for centuries. And on its decaying surface, you'll see a linear garden of hemlock seedlings, ferns, and huckleberry bushes, all drawing moisture and nutrients from the slow-motion breakdown of the wood. This is a forest built on its own death and renewal, a cycle measured in millennia, not centuries. The biodiversity here is subtle but profound. It's not the loud, colorful spectacle of a tropical jungle, but a quieter, more intricate web. Salamanders, like the delicate, lungless Pacific giant salamander, thrive in the constant dampness. Banana slugs, bright yellow denizens of the understory, glide along leaving silvery trails, playing a crucial role in breaking down detritus. The varied thrush, the winter wren, and the majestic, Endangered northern spotted owl are avian residents adapted to the deep woods, and then there are the mammals. The elusive Roosevelt elk, browsing on tender shrubs, black bears turning over logs in search of grubs, and river otters playing in the streams that lace through the forest like veins. Every element, from the grandest fire to the smallest fungus, is interconnected, and the linchpin holding it all together is the constant, generous gift of water from the ocean. This is a system in a delicate, dynamic balance, a balance that has been maintained for thousands of years, shaping a landscape of mythic beauty and quiet power. But this balance is not static, and the very forces that created are now changing, sending ripples of disruption through every layer of this complex web, a story of vulnerability we must confront. To truly understand the coastal rainforest, we must look beyond the green curtain and into the microscopic and symbiotic relationships that form its true foundation. The most critical of these is a partnership so fundamental it literally shapes the landscape, the mycorrhizal network. The trees of the rainforest, for all their towering majesty, have surprisingly shallow root systems. In the nutrient-poor, acidic soils, they cannot effectively gather enough phosphorus and nitrogen on their own. Enter the fungi, vast, invisible networks of fungal filaments, called mycelium, weave through the soil, connecting to the roots of nearly every plant in the forest in a mutually beneficial symbiosis known as mycorrhiza. The fungi, with their immense surface area, act as super-efficient extensions of the tree roots, scavenging for water and minerals from the soil and trading them to the tree for sugars produced through photosynthesis. This wood wide web, as scientists poetically call it, is not just a series of individual trades, it is a communal network. Research has shown that these fungal networks can connect multiple trees of the same and even different species. A towering, sun-drenched Douglas fir, through its fungal connections, can shuttle surplus carbon sugars to a shaded hemlock seedling struggling on the dark forest floor, effectively feeding it. Dying trees may dump their remaining resources into the network to nourish their neighbors. This system creates a resilient, cooperative community where trees are not just competitors for light, but interdependent participants in a shared economy of resources. It's a stunning revelation. The forest behaves less like a collection of individuals and more like a single, interconnected superorganism. This hidden cooperation extends to other relationships. The nitrogen that is so scarce in these ecosystems is often brought in by specific plants like red alder, a deciduous tree that pioneers disturbed areas like riverbanks. Alder has a symbiotic relationship with bacteria in its root nodules that fix atmospheric nitrogen into a usable form. When the alder leaves fall and decompose, they enrich the soil with nitrogen, eventually paving the way for the more demanding conifers to move in. The salmon, those iconic ocean-going fish, represent another breathtaking nutrient vector. Every year, millions of salmon return from the ocean to the very streams where they were born to spawn and die. Their bodies, packed with marine-derived nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and carbon, are dragged into the forest by bears, eagles, and other animals. The remains of the salmon decompose, fertilizing the riparian zones with ocean nutrients. Studies have traced isotopes from salmon in the tissues of trees growing hundreds of feet from the stream bank. This means the grandeur of a centuries-old cedar is in part built from the bodies of salmon that returned generations ago. The ocean's abundance is literally woven into the fabric of the forest. Now, consider the architecture of light. The canopy is not a uniform green blanket, but a complex, stratified city. The emergent layer, the tallest trees, captures the full force of the sun and weather. Below them, the main canopy forms a dense, continuous layer that captures most of the remaining light. Beneath that is an understory layer of shade-tolerant trees like western hemlock and vine maple. Then comes the shrub layer with huckleberry and salmonberry, and finally the forest floor layer of ferns, mosses, and herbs. Each layer creates a specific microclimate of humidity, light and temperature, allowing for an incredible stacking of life. Epiphytes, plants that grow on other plants without being parasitic, thrive here. Mosses, lichens, and ferns coat every branch and trunk, absorbing moisture directly from the air. In some areas, you'll even see canopy soil, accumulated organic matter on large branches that is deep enough for other plants to root in, creating floating gardens in the sky. This vertical complexity provides an immense variety of habitats. A single old-growth tree can host hundreds of species of insects, lichens, and bryophytes. The northern spotted owl, an indicator species for forest health, relies on the complex structure of old growth for nesting in large cavities and for hunting the flying squirrels that glide between trees in the dense canopy. The marbled seabird performs one of nature's most improbable commutes, flying inland from the ocean to lay its single egg on a mossy branch high in the canopy of an ancient tree. This intricate, layered world, built on fungal partnerships, nutrient cycles spanning from ocean to mountain, and a meticulous use of vertical space, represents a pinnacle of ecological engineering. It is a system that maximizes the use of every drop of water, every photon of light, and every atom of nutrient in a slow, efficient dance of life. However, this beautifully tuned system operates within a very specific climatic envelope, and as that envelope warms and shifts, the delicate threads holding it together begin to fray, threatening to unravel the entire tapestry from the roots up. The stability that allowed coastal temperate rainforests to develop their immense biomass and complex structures is now under unprecedented threat from human-driven climate change. The very oceanic and atmospheric patterns that create the cool, wet conditions are being disrupted, pushing the ecosystem into uncharted territory. The most direct impact is on the hydrological cycle, the lifeblood of the rainforest. While the total annual precipitation may not always decrease, its pattern is changing dramatically. Warmer atmospheric temperatures lead to more water vapor, which can result in more intense atmospheric rivers, causing severe flooding and landslides that scour out streams, destroy salmon redds, nests, and topple shallow-rooted trees. And conversely, warmer summers are leading to longer, more severe droughts. The summer fog, a critical moisture source that historically reduced evaporation stress on plants, is becoming less frequent in some areas. These prolonged dry periods leave the forest, which is evolutionarily unprepared for extended drought, dangerously parched. Trees become war-stressed, their growth slows, and they become far more susceptible to secondary enemies that are now thriving in the warmer conditions, insects, and disease. The mountain pine beetle, once kept in check by cold winter temperatures that killed its larvae, is now surviving winters and expanding its range into higher elevations and new tree species, including coastal pines. Fungal root diseases like our malaria become more virulent in stressed trees, but perhaps the most visible, catastrophic agent of change is wildfire. Coastal rainforests are not fire adapted like the dry interior forests. They burn very rarely, sometimes on a 500 to 1,000 year cycle. Their wood is dense with moisture, and the understory is often too damp to carry a flame. Now, however, drought conditions are creating tinder-dry fuel loads. The unprecedented wildfires that have begun to sweep through areas of coastal British Columbia and southeastern Alaska are a shocking deviation from the historical norm. These climate fires burn with an intensity that the ecosystem has no defense against, consuming not just the understory, but the canopy itself, wiping out centuries of growth in the complex structure in a matter of hours. The aftermath is not a rejuvenating fire, but a sterilizing one, leaving behind a landscape that may not return to rainforest for centuries, if ever, especially under the new climatic regime. The ocean, the forest partner, is also changing in dangerous ways. Ocean acidification, caused by the absorption of excess atmospheric CO2, is altering the chemistry of the seawater. This has dire implications for the entire marine food web, starting with plankton and shell-forming organisms. For the rainforest, the most tangible marine threat is the impact on salmon. Salmon are cold water fish, and rising ocean temperatures are shifting their food sources, increasing disease prevalence, and making their marine habitat less hospitable. Combined with the habitat degradation in their freshwater spawning streams from landslides and warming water, salmon populations are crashing in many areas. This represents a severing of a critical nutrient pipeline. Fewer salmon mean fewer marine nutrients being transported into the forest, potentially leading to long-term nutrient depletion that could stunt forest growth and productivity. Furthermore, climate change is enabling the northward expansion of species from warmer regions, disrupting established ecological balances. The arrival of new insect pests, invasive plants like Himalayan blackberry that outcompete native shrubs, or even generalist bird species that outcompete specialists, like the spotted owl, creates novel pressures. The ecosystem must adapt, but the pace of climatic change is outstripping the natural adaptive capacity of these long-lived trees and slow-reproducing animals. Trees that germinated in a cool, misty climate 300 years ago are now facing conditions they are genetically unprepared for. They cannot pick up and move. While some species may slowly migrate upslope or northward, the physical geography, the coastline, and mountain ranges creates hard barriers. There's nowhere for coastal Sitka spruce to go if the narrow band of habitat it requires disappears. Scientists are observing increased mortality events where swaths of trees, particularly cedars and hemlocks, are dying off due to a combination of drought, stress, and pathogens. This isn't just the loss of individual trees, it's the breakdown of the canopy architecture, the drying of the understory microclimate, and the collapse of habitat for countless dependent species. The resilient, interconnected system is being hit with multiple, simultaneous stressors, hydrological shifts, heat, fire, pests, and severed nutrient cycles, creating a synergistic effect that is far more damaging than any one threat alone. The coastal temperate rainforest, a bastion of stability and abundance, is becoming a climate change frontline, showcasing in vivid, green detail the profound consequences of a warming world on even our most robust natural systems. Faced with this cascade of threats, the question becomes, what can be done? Is the fate of these magnificent forests sealed? Or is there a path toward resilience and preservation? The answer is complex, but it hinges on a two-pronged approach: aggressive global action to mitigate climate change and innovative, science-based local and regional strategies to enhance the ecosystem's ability to withstand the changes already in motion. Mitigation is non-negotiable. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions globally is the only way to slow the overarching driver of all these impacts. Every fraction of a degree of warning avoided matters for defining the future climate envelope of these regions. But given the inertia in the climate system, some level of change is already locked in, making adaptation strategies critical. On the ground, this means rethinking forest management with a focus on resilience. For decades, forestry in these regions has often prioritized the harvest of the largest, most valuable trees, fragmenting the forest landscape and simplifying its structure. Modern conservation forestry is shifting towards emulating natural disturbance patterns and protecting what remains of the old growth not just as museum pieces, but as vital repositories of genetic diversity, complex structure, and carbon. Old-growth forests are massive carbon sinks, storing far more carbon in their living trees, dead wood, and soils than younger, managed forests. Protecting them is a powerful climate solution in itself. Restoration efforts are equally important. This involves actively repairing damaged ecosystems, such as rebuilding salmon habitat by placing large, woody debris in streams to create pools and hiding places, replanting native riparian vegetation to shade streams and keep water cool. And in some cases, assisted migration, the deliberate planting of tree seeds or seedlings from populations that are better adapted to predicted future climates, such as those from slightly warmer or drier areas. This controversial tactic acknowledges that natural migration may be too slow. Another key strategy is increasing landscape connectivity. Creating and protecting corridors of forestland allows species to move and shift their ranges in response to changing conditions. This means working across jurisdictions with private landowners, First Nations, Indigenous communities, and governments to create a networked mosaic of protected areas, managed forests, and restored zones. The role of indigenous knowledge and stewardship is paramount here. Indigenous peoples have inhabited and shaped these coastal rainforests for millennia, using sophisticated practices like controlled burning, selective harvesting, and tending of plant communities. Their deep, place-based knowledge of species interactions, hydrological cycles, and long-term ecological patterns is an invaluable resource for guiding modern conservation and restoration efforts. Supporting indigenous-led land and water governance is not only a matter of justice but of ecological pragmatism. On the marine side, protecting and restoring salmon runs is a linchpin for the entire coastal ecosystem. This means modernizing hatcheries to avoid genetic issues, removing obsolete dams that block migration, rigorously protecting watersheds from pollution and sedimentation, and implementing sustainable fishing quotas that account for the new pressures of climate change. Furthermore, scientific research and monitoring must be intensified. We need to better understand the thresholds of resilience for key species, the dynamics of the mycorrhizal networks under stress, and the effectiveness of different adaptation interventions. Citizen science can play a role here, with volunteers helping to track phenology, wildlife sightings, and tree health. Finally, there is the economic argument. These forests provide immense ecosystem services beyond timber. They regulate water flows and quality, support commercial and recreational fisheries, underpin a thriving nature-based tourism industry, and store carbon. Quantifying and investing in these services can create new economic models that value standing forests as much as, or more than, harvested ones. The challenge is immense, but it is not insurmountable. It requires a shift from viewing the rainforest as a collection of resources to be extracted, to understanding it as an integrated life support system that we are a part of and utterly dependent upon. It demands collaboration across scientific disciplines, political boundaries, and cultural perspectives. It asks us to make decisions today for benefits that may not be fully realized for generations. The story of the coastal temperate rainforest is at a crossroads. One path leads to continued degradation, simplification, and loss of a world of unparalleled beauty and complexity. The other path requires difficult choices, innovation, and a profound respect for the interconnected web of life. It leads towards a future where human communities live as conscious, responsible partners within the rainforest, helping to steward its resilience so it can continue to weave its green magic along the wild edges of the continent for centuries to come. So, what does this all mean for you, sitting here watching this? The fate of a distant, mist-shrouded forest might seem abstract, but the truth is the threads connecting that ecosystem to your daily life are stronger than you think. The coastal temperate rainforest is a global treasure and a vital part of our planet's life support system. The carbon locked in its peatlands and massive trees helps regulate the global climate. Its influence on weather patterns extends far beyond its borders. The salmon that nourish its trees are a food source for people across the globe. Its very existence speaks to the resilience and beauty of the natural world, offering a psychological and spiritual refuge that is increasingly precious in our modern lives. When we allow such places to degrade, we lose more than just scenery. We lose a part of our planetary heritage, a library of genetic and ecological knowledge, and a critical ally in the fight against climate change. Understanding this intricate system, from the fungal networks in the soil to the salmon in the streams to the towering canopy, changes our relationship with nature. It moves us from being passive observers to informed participants. It reveals that a walk in such a woods is not just a stroll among trees, but a journey through a living, breathing, communicating community that has thrived on cooperation and interconnection for millennia. This knowledge is not meant to leave you in despair at the threats, but to empower you with purpose, because you have a role to play in this story. Your choices, your voice, and your attention matter. Start by becoming a conscious consumer. The timber, paper, and seafood you buy have a direct footprint. Look for certifications like the Forest Stewardship Council, FSC, for wood products, which indicates more sustainable forestry practices, and choose seafood guides that recommend sustainably harvested salmon. Reduce your personal carbon footprint where you can. The climate stability of the rainforest depends on global action. But individual action must be coupled with collective voice support, both through awareness and, if possible, through donations. The organizations and indigenous groups on the front lines of rainforest conservation, restoration, and science. These are the people planting trees, monitoring wildlife, restoring streams, and advocating for policy change. Use your voice as a citizen. Write to your elected representatives at local, national, and international levels. Tell them you value old-growth forests, strong climate policies, the protection of biodiversity, and the upholding of indigenous land rights. Vote for leaders and policies that prioritize long-term ecological health over short-term extraction. And finally, if you have the opportunity, visit these places responsibly. Seek out ecotourism operators who prioritize low impact and education. Walk quietly on the trails, feel the spray of the ocean mingling with the forest mist. Place your hand on the bark of a centuries-old cedar and listen. In that silence, broken only by the drip of water and the call of a bird, you will feel the profound power and fragility of this place. That experience is a catalyst. It transforms statistics and facts into a personal connection, a memory that fuels advocacy. The story of the coastal temperate rainforest is ultimately a story about boundaries between ocean and land, competition and cooperation, stability and change, and between humanity and the rest of nature. It shows us that these boundaries are more permeable than we thought. We are not separate from these systems. Our actions ripple through the fungal networks and up to the canopy. The health of this coastal ribbon of green is a mirror reflecting our own choices and our own future on this planet. It stands as a testament to what is possible when life cooperates and adapts over millennia, and as a warning of how quickly that work can be undone. But it also stands as an invitation to learn, to care, and to act. This deep dive into the heart of the coastal rainforest is just the beginning. The natural world is full of these incredible hidden stories waiting to be told. If you want to understand the secret language of trees, the unbelievable migrations of animals, or the hidden forces shaping our planet's most breathtaking landscapes, then you are in the right place. I want you to do 3 things right now. First, hit that subscribe button. By subscribing, you're not just getting more videos, you're joining a community of curious people who believe that understanding our world is the first step to protecting it. Second, ring that notification bell. I don't just upload regularly. I dive deep into research to bring you original, data-based narratives like this one, and you won't want to miss a single one. And third, and most importantly, tell me in the comments below, what part of this ecosystem shocked or amazed you the most? Was it the wood wide web, the salmon nutrient cycle, or the climate threats? Your thoughts and questions fuel this channel and help decide what epic natural story we explore next. This isn't just my channel. It's ours, a platform to explore, learn, and connect with the wonder of this planet. So subscribe, ring the bell, and let's start a conversation in the comments. The adventure is just beginning.